We meet here in order to work on ourselves and to learn what it means to work intelligently, productively, which I will assure you is very, very hard work. The hardest work you've ever done in your life. Anything else you've ever done, learning a language, learning your career, whatever it is nothing compared to the intense new kind of effort that is required of you and me in order to smash the insanity that up to this point we have called sanity and intelligence and an exciting life and a good life, all the time underneath being very scared. So tonight we're going to discuss several ways in which to go against everything that has kept you, that has kept me, being the kind of a madman. It's not too strong. It's not strong enough. Madman, madwoman that I have been and that you have been up until this evening. We're going to do it by stating it in a certain way, a way that you might find both interesting and very practical. I'll tell you what I'm going to do tomorrow. This is what I'm talking personally now, what I'm going to do tomorrow, and I want you to do it with me, wherever you are, in your own home or shopping or wherever. I want you to be quite awake to everything you do, everything you think, everything you say, the way you gesture to someone, to your motives, and then try to do something that is very unpopular with yourself. This is the key phrase for tonight. Maybe you can remember it by putting it this way. Try to do something that is very unpopular with yourself. Now, what does that mean? When I'm living in dreamland, which is simply a life dominated by what I want, what I think I must have, I call that a pleasurable and exciting life. Which isn't at all. It's really a very nervous life, filled with secret hostilities and resentments, hoping and praying that I'll get that letter, that I'll get that raise, that I'll get that smile of approval, that things will go okay. I have to look into myself and see where I can do something that will jolt me out of this mechanical way of living, so that for heaven's sake I can see it's mechanical. One way I can do it is to do something that is unpopular with what I call myself, with who I am. You'll see. We'll get concrete in a minute. So that I become miserable, but know it. And that's still not too strong a word. There may be stronger words, but I can't think of one for now. How do I do it? How do I become unpopular with this old, domineering nature that has made me the kind of a person I am today, which is scared of everything? I'm scared of everyone. First of all, tomorrow, when I get up, and when you get up in the morning, and see people, maybe talk on the phone, maybe just think as you go about making your coffee in the morning, and you're wide awake to the thought that goes through your mind, and you catch yourself in a mental movie, in a daydream, in a stage performance, in which you are what? Well, you find out. You're reviewing the applause you got when you made that funny remark, the laughter you got. You're reviewing some accomplishment you want to do tomorrow that you think will make you feel more secure. You're going to cease to enjoy the ego gratification, the ego pleasure, the competition with someone else. Maybe later in the day you're in competition. You think today, just today, and see where you might have been in verbal ego competition with someone. Mental. And if you feel, or if you felt today, you felt either superior or inferior to anyone, you are in ego competition. Okay. This I see. I see myself behaving in a certain way, which all my life has been very popular. I get a real thrill out of exchanging phony flatteries with you, of being comfortable in your company, because we have mutually agreed not to disturb each other. You don't disturb me, and I won't disturb you. That has given me a good deal of pseudo-pleasure, which is sleep. I'm going to find some way to do the thing that will be unpopular with this tyrannical nature, with this mechanical thought, with this usual emotion. I'm going to do something that will make it scream. Are you following? All right? I'm going to do something that will make it scream. Because, still being awake, very watchful, very alert, I will hear it scream, and I know this has been the thing that has been making me unhappy, tense, afraid. I've identified the imp. I see it. And when I see it, a great feeling comes over me, a great insight. I'll use the word deliberately. A great power comes over me. And I say, quite emotionally, no more. When you catch a crook, you have to catch a crook before you can put him in jail. Get him out of the way, right? If I can catch it while it's going on, see that it has been masquerading as the right thing for me to be, as the right thing for me to do. You give me a scowling look. I'm about to scowl back, because this has been the popular thing to do, the self-protective, in quote marks, thing to do. I catch it. I hear it scream. I say no more, and I'm free. See what I'm free of? Right? Wonderful. I am free of destroying myself. What else can I do? Oh, this one was an easy one. Refusing to be in ego competition with you or with anyone else, either in daydreams or out in the actual world where you and I are in competition over building houses or running restaurants or writing books. I can catch that. I'll give you another one. This one is terribly embarrassing. Remember what I just said about the scream? The embarrassment of seeing what I'm going to tell you in a minute is the scream. But once you hear it, you can do something with it. Because now you've seen something, you've awakened, the scream wakes you up. Don't you know you're asleep? Don't you know you're living in dreamland? Because this is all you've ever known? We're shaking each other here. Oh, this is rough. This is terrible. I'm going to see my actual motive, my real motive for doing something, for saying something, for thinking something, as opposed to what I stated was my motive. You know the old saying that a man will give you two reasons. The one he says and his real one. We're going to look inside ourselves and see what self-interest is there, what I want out of the situation, so that I can drop it too. So I'm not a slave to unseen things. What I have called myself, what I've identified as being me, which is not me at all, but this imposter that has taken me over. You watch your dialogue, and I watched this at the Thanksgiving dinner, by the way. Maybe you were working too. I don't know. You find out why you are nice to someone. You find out why you speak to them in a certain way, why you behave in a certain way toward them. And if you can bear the shock of it, and I'll tell you it'll be a terrible shock, if you do it, and not deceive yourselves into thinking that you're doing it. The greater the shock, the louder the scream, the more mental health. Because this means the ending of self-deception, of playing the game, of playing it safe, so that I can go home and say to myself, well, I managed to keep my mask in place pretty good all day long. No one saw it through me too badly. I didn't do so bad today. Now tomorrow, if I can just do it equally well, I'll be all right. Could you imagine what your morning is going to be like? That you have to get up and start it all over again, instead of walking into a situation at work or into the living room or wherever you might be with your relatives or whatever, and walk into that situation with a mind that has no motive at all for anything at all. No motive at all. No motive to protect yourself, to get anything, to be impressive, to want them to continue to like you in the morning as they did last night, but simply be in that situation with a free mind and free emotions. Do you realize what you're going to cause inside yourself and cause inside of other people when you start to do this? There's going to be some disturbance. You're going to have to use this disturbance in both yourself and in the other person equally well. Not do the popular thing of trying to appease them, for example. Do you appease people? You know what that means? To try to please them so they won't be mad at you. You will stop that immediately and forever. And it may be the end of certain relationships. And hooray for you if you start to end it internally. Don't leave your wife, don't leave your husband. It's not what we're talking about at all. We're talking about internal work so that you're free of a person that you may have to live with for some reason or other. Now let's take off on another angle. You know what your prayer is? This connects with what we're talking about. You know what your prayer is? I'll tell you what it is. It is your own nature. Your nature is your prayer, and you're living this out all day long. What you are is your prayer. Okay? Right? No disagreement with that? What you are is what you pray for. And you always get it. You always get it because like attracts like. This is why hoodlums are attracted to hoodlums. Musicians are attracted to musicians. There's certain things in common. If you could begin to see what you're asking for, and then have a higher discernment so that you can see what you get does to you, does more to you, you can begin to put an end to it. Then you will have a spark of something that is quite different from your usual prayer, which will be a new prayer, which will be a new asking, and which will in itself attract of its kind, and you'll double and triple and quadruple this new spark, this new consciousness of what you are. That will be your new prayer. And that is why you will lose your old friends and get new friends, people who want these things. But you're going to have to shock yourself into seeing that what you're presently praying for, with your old nature asking for, wishing for, provides the thrill and then the downcast, downfall on the level of opposites. Do you actually see that you do get what you are? And it's absolutely impossible to get anything but that. You get your own nature back. How can it be otherwise? When you're on a certain level, look at it in a simple way. How many of you, let's say in past years, let's make it easy, at the same time understandable. How many of you had a hostile nature a few years ago, and you always ended up fighting with people? Right? You got what you are. And how can it ever be anything else? If we could see this, and then try to see this, that I love my hostile nature because I love the thrill of it, which we've called in this group a false feeling of life. And then get to this point where you're going to do the unpopular thing with this old nature, this egotistical nature, of saying, dear sir, you're talking to this old nature now. Regardless of what happens to me, I'm not going along with you anymore. And you will hear the scream. I'm not going along with nodding my head anymore. I'm even going to stop nodding my head anymore. You think you can do a big thing in this? You do one little thing tomorrow, and I'll congratulate you. I'm not going to mechanically and unconsciously nod my head when you make some dumb remark about politics or religion or anything else. I'm not going to agree with you just so I have you as an ally so you'll nod your head in agreement with me when I make a dumb remark. I'm even going to be aware of how my head starts to go forward and agree with you because I want you to buy my products, or I want you to like me. I want you to make me feel less afraid in this world. I'm going to stop nodding my head. First, the other person won't notice it. After a while, he or she will begin to notice it. And that will make him or her very scared. So I'm going to stop praying. I'm going to stop praying, wishing out of neurosis. Because that's exactly what I'll get back from you. And that's not what I want at all anymore. We're going to look a little deeper into what it means to stand alone and not have you or you or you, including the thought that is so comforting to me when I lose you physically. That has to go through. It's a terrible thing. That means that when I lose certain benefits which I've deliberately and consciously dropped because I've dropped the thought about them, that I can't replace it with something else. When I lose something, I can't say, well, I'll get something else in its place. I can't say that at all. I'm right back where I started. I prayed for the same level of neurosis to come again, and I'll get it again. I can't say, well, God has something better for me. That's again comfort. I have to learn when I'm in an uncomfortable state, a state of loss, to just stand there very quietly and not make any movement at all with my mind and just see what happens. And I'm going to do this not once a day, but as many times a day as I can, so that I can hear the scream as many times as I can a day and go on from there. Which means that I see the bad state that I'm actually in. And as we've said many times, it is good to see the bad. Let's get an illustration on the last point. Those of you who drive an automobile with a stick shift, you know what neutral gear is, do you not? You know what neutral gear is? You know what high and reverse is? It's a good illustration. It's very down to earth and very practical. You'll see how it connects with what we're talking about. All day long, I must necessarily think about certain practical things. Otherwise, I'll never get home, or I'll never wash my clothes properly, or not repair a light, or whatever. I have to think about certain things. But when it is not necessary to think, I can be in what we can call a neutral state. Neutral. Nothing is happening. The car isn't running backward or forward. It's not doing anything at all. It's just sitting there. So if I find myself in a wrong state in working on these things and being unpopular with myself, unpopular with my usual mechanical neurotic reaction, if I find myself in an unhappy state, I can bring myself back to a neutral state, which is a state of not thinking at all, not judging anything, which is not trying to get anything or prove anything, which is not trying to be anyone. And in that state, I see with perfect clarity what I must think about the next minute. And I won't make a mistake, not on my level. A mistake could be on another level, which we won't go into. But I won't make the mistake of praying for comfort, not thinking about it, because I'm in a neutral state and I don't need comfort. Comfort in a quote marks. I don't need allies at all. Can you imagine God wanting an ally? Truth wanting an ally? So it's very nice to know, and you follow this, it's very nice to know that whatever state I am in, if I am in a wrong state of thought, wanting to prove myself, wanting to be someone, I can drop it and be in this neutral state where there's no me there to not want anything at all. I'm not talking about food, of course. I'm talking about anything psychological. Where I don't need you for anything except in natural things on the physical level. And that is right. And that will be a right relationship between you and I when I have learned to live in this neutral state and then to go into thought when it's necessary to repair the car or cook the dinner or whatever. Now, let me summarize just a little bit. I'm going to do this. Tomorrow morning, I invite you to join me. Tomorrow morning, I'm going to remember what was said tonight in this meeting. And I'm going to get up. The minute I get up, before I get up, I'm going to see where I want to lazily lay in bed instead of get out of bed. And I'm going to jolt my physical body and get out of there and hear it scream and go out and do anything. It doesn't make a difference what I do. Oh, I'm not going to lay there anymore in the daydream about dreaming about money and sex. And what I'm going to accomplish today, I'm going to produce deliberately and consciously a scream. And then I'm going to let it scream all at once, and I'm going to get up. And for the rest of the day, whatever I run into, and it's marvelous, life offers us many exercises just automatically walking into this room. I'm going to find as many places as I can where instead of reaching for a thought which will keep me feeling secure, I'm not going to grab that thought at all, so I'll be lost. So I won't know who I am. Isn't that tremendous? Isn't that great? To be in a condition where you don't know who you are? Because when I don't know who I am, I have no problems. I have problems only when I know who I am. I'm young, all right, now I'm going to worry about getting old. I'm clever. I'm going to worry about my joke falling flat. I'm pleasant. I'm going to worry that you're going to see through my suppressed hatred. I'm going to work so hard that the end of tomorrow night, I'm going to have that much more gold, awareness, understanding, self-command than I had tomorrow morning. Are you going to join me in it? Or are you going to forget everything you've heard? Because you're not aware, you might forget everything you've heard, most of what you've heard, because you're not aware of how frightening this is to the artificial personality that wants nothing to do with it. wants to do the easy thing, the popular thing, the rolling downhill thing. It's easy to roll downhill. I'll tell you personally, I'm going to make it just as rough on me as I can. Just as rough as I can. I don't know all the places. I'm going to find out so that I can do what we're trying to do together, which is to shatter the chains. What are your chains? You find out. You know what they are, don't you? We're going to put an end to it. You make up your mind that either with this group or without it, or with books or without books, you're going to do it. Because life is indeed not worth living the way it is now. And you know it. The pretense is not worth it. And if you will leap into the darkness, I cannot tell you what's on the other side, but I'll tell you that there is something on the other side of it. But you have to do the leaping. You have to be 50 times as scared as you are now. Excuse me. You have to be 500 times as scared as you are now. But I will tell you, if you will enter it, you will come out on the other side. You will be someone else. You'll be a new man or a new woman. This is open discussion, but let me start it off by asking you a question. Putting everything together that we've talked about in these classes, let me ask you a question. Why should you care what happens to you? I'm not talking about physically. You should care that you have enough money to live on, in the house and all that. Why should you care what happens to you? Can you make a connection? Look at it. Look. When you care, you're going to put everything together. When you care what happens to you, you create your problem. Right? Any disagreement on that? When you care what happens to you, psychologically, you create the problem, which is you. Look, we're perfectly well aware that tomorrow morning you have to go out and open that shop or go down to the office or go shopping to take care of the home or whatever you do. We're quite aware of that. You're living in a physical body in a physical world. Those things have to be taken care of. Why are they a problem? Why don't you just do them? Well, we can't just do anything. We're so neurotic, we just can't do anything. I have to do it at the same wage you get. You get $5 an hour and I get $4 an hour. I'm going to scream my idiotic head off till I get $6 an hour. I can't even let you be neurotic. I have to teach you how to be unneurotic. Or I have to get pleasure out of a secret comparison with you. I can't just let you be sick. I have to do something with it. I have to feel superior to you. I have to feel sorry for you. That poor woman, how she suffered. You're neurotic when you say that. Why do you care at all what happens to you? It's because you think you exist. You have a wrong idea of your existence. That is why, and that is what insanity is. That's what causes wars and crimes and conniving and heartache. Have you ever tried not caring what happens to you? Not when you cross a busy street, you understand. But when you get fired, when your husband leaves you, your wife leaves you, when your children get in trouble with the law, or they mess up their lives and you know they're going to mess it up, you get a feeling of helplessness, that you can't do anything. Of course you can't do anything. The reason you can't do anything about anyone else is because you have never done anything properly with yourself. And so this old nature that we talked about earlier, wanting to do the popular thing, like I think I'll send my daughter to a psychiatrist at $50 an hour. Why weren't you a sane mother or father just to begin with? Just to begin with. So that you didn't help them needing to go to the psychiatrist. Which will do them little good anyway. Why are you in sorrow over anything at all? You tell me. I don't know. You tell me why you're anxious about anything at all. I don't know. Tell me. And if you tell me, it will be a falsehood, but you won't know it's a falsehood because you don't understand your mind and your life. Would you like to talk about something? Look. Never mind how foolish you appear to others. Never mind if your good name, your good reputation is destroyed. Bless the day when your reputation is destroyed. Don't you want to be out of it more than you want people to think well of you? To like you? Why do you want anyone to like you? I've asked you that before. How badly do you want out of the mess? Make up your mind. I've told you, make up your mind. I hope you're sick and tired of trying to please people. Anyone. Because then you'll be a decent human being. Then you'll have a conscience. Instead of being a self-split human being who knows you're going to blow up in the next hour. You know you're going to blow up because you always blow up. You can go as far as you want, or you can stay right where you are. You can continue to lie to yourself as you've been doing up to this point, or you can begin to see that the whole thing is a lie. Not just the word is the lie, the life is the lie. The life is the lie. Now to this life lying comes verbal lying, motive lying that we talked about. Physical lying. When you get physically tense and want to knock someone's block off, you're lying physically. Because there's no need to do that at all. What do you care if the whole thing collapses? Your business, your so-called good relationships with other people. What do you care? What do you care if all your good thoughts about yourself are destroyed by an external happening? What do you care? I tell you, rejoice and be happy when you're destroyed. Aren't you glad? Aren't you glad that the misery is coming to an end at last? Doesn't that excite you? I tell you, I get excited. When something bad happens. Ooh. I'll get rid of 20 chains off the arm, off the leg, around the neck. I got rid of 20 chains, and I said I'm free. And I go out and preach sermons to people and live in dreamland. And one day I'm jolted, I trip, and I find out there's another one down there I didn't even know I had. Isn't that great? Isn't it great not to lie anymore about what I'm like? I feel sorry for all of you. And then glad. Because if you'll go through the agony, you understand. Who wants to suffer? No one wants to suffer, but it's quite necessary.
Our false self or ego self causes all our suffering. If this is a correct statement and we understand it intellectually, why is it so difficult to let our false self die and thus end our suffering?
Well, we've answered that many times. Maybe it can be answered in a little different way. Basically, essentially, it is difficult to give it up because I'm afraid, point one, I'm afraid of being no one. I'm afraid of not existing. But I have given a false value to my existence, which is me, you, my successes or my failures or my old age or young age, whatever it might be. I've given a value to that on the level of thinking, of thought. I give it up. I give up the false sense of self. Who am I? Who am I is the most terrifying question the false self itself can face. Not me. I'm not even in it yet. I'm still dominated by all these wrong ideas about who I am. It's incredibly difficult even to see this, to say nothing of starting to die. Die while you're alive. To what? To thought, to description, and all the contributing things that go to it. My vanity, my emotions, my love of hating you. I'm not going to give that up because that's what keeps my false self that this note talks about in place. Why don't you, by little steps at a time, try giving up something? We talked about it all last night. about finding some small place where I can catch an anxious thought, give it up. Instead of riding along with it, because I enjoy the agitation. I enjoy my worry, for example. It's very valuable to me, quote marks. Give it up, I challenge you, and see how difficult it is. Do it in small ways, and you will see the real value of not being who you've always described yourself as being. And I will tell you that you have no idea at this point of how deeply and how thoroughly you do describe yourself, because you're not aware of your own thought processes which paint you as being the kind of a person you are. You don't see it at all. This is why all this intense self-examination is necessary. And this is why we fear death. You know why you fear death? Because you say, what will become of me? You've identified with the physical body, and when that goes, where am I? Who am I? What's going to happen to me? You've identified with the physical body, which you don't even see. What if you didn't call yourself 6 feet, good-looking, dynamic, or whatever you call yourself? What if you simply inhabit the physical body without attaching yourself to it psychologically, mentally, emotionally? Then could you be afraid of death? No, because then you have nothing. Then you have nothing. Having nothing, how can you be afraid of losing anything? But this is all hard work. That's why we're here. All last night we talked about it. That was the purpose of it. That question was answered last night. Why don't you go against your habitual nature? Why don't you do things that are unpopular with your neurosis? Do things that are unpopular with your neurosis. Mentally screaming back at somebody. Mentally getting revenge on someone. I've told you before, one of the most sick actions you can ever take against yourself is to take mental revenge against anyone. That's the level of the animal. I'm going to get you, get back. I wonder how many of you in this room are in a position, you think about this, if you can bear it, where you in your present state are in a certain state of submission to another human being. You'll have to find your own examples. Husband, wife, even children, parents, boss. And if for some reason the table should turn, would you take revenge on him? Would you strike back? Now it's my turn, sort of thing. You may not see it now because you've concealed it from yourself. Or you have a chance to get back at someone. Now it's my turn. Now it's my turn is a sick statement. Now I've got you. The law was on your side. Or circumstances were on your side. Now it's my turn. Oh boy. That's your egotism trying to affirm itself through revenge. And you will make yourself sicker than you were before. That's what you want. Or you can catch it in the process of arising and die. And die to your own sickness. Have you ever said that in the past? Now it's my turn. Now it's my turn.
What is a right work attitude toward abortion?
Toward abortion, the right work attitude toward any social idea is to forget it. You're not going to figure it out at all that way. Not at all. I'll tell you why. When you ask a question like that, it all has to do, in some way or other, with your own personal problem, your own self-interest in some way or other. Why do you try to answer a question on the level of thought which can't be answered. This is very difficult to explain. Let me do the best I can. If you will understand what it means not to think about these things, but to see them, you will know what to do in every situation of life, whether it's abortion or marriage or divorce or finances. For example, this is a very dishonest world, a crooked world, and you're involved with it in one way or another because you're involved with it because you have to buy groceries and build homes and pay taxes and things like that. Can you see a situation from the viewpoint where there's no decision at all necessary? If you can, I'll tell you something happy that will happen to you. You will never be in a position where you have to make a decision on the everyday level at all because you won't be involved in it in the first place. We're asleep. We're all mixed up. We get mixed up with the wrong man or the wrong woman. How am I going to get out of this mess? I ask you. You're not going to answer it on that level. Why don't you ask, what's the matter with me that I walked into it with my eyes closed in the first place? Further, in answer to this question, I realize I asked for questions, but on a higher level than this. Why don't you find out for yourself? Why are you asking anyone about abortion or crime or divorce? Why don't you cut yourself off from every social idea, so-called righteousness, and find out what is right because you know it from yourself, which is not on the level of opinion. It should be very apparent to you that a question such as abortion must always have opposite camps, right? The pro-abortion camp and the anti-abortion camp, which means it's on the level of insanity. You live from yourself in the first place. You won't get into problems where you'd have to ask the question because you'll be a lot smarter on the everyday level. Then you won't have to get out of them in the second place. You want someone to give you a pat answer? Yes. Yes. Get an abortion. No, don't get an abortion. You want a pat answer? Oh, now it's settled. Now I understand. You don't understand a thing. You're just going to follow what someone says, and you're going to be in a similar type of problem if this is your problem. Next week, then you'll have to ask someone again. Finally, we're always disappointed when we don't get a yes or no answer to a question because we want the relief of someone else, some authority, someone who's smarter than I am or you am, making a decision for us. Now I don't have to decide. Someone will have to decide for me. Isn't that great? And so you've learned nothing. It's not going to be made that easy for you here. I'm sorry. As disappointed as you may be in certain answers, you're not going to be lied to. You're going to be told over and over and over and over, wake up, for heaven's sake. So that two things will happen. So you don't walk into problems in the first place if this is a problem with you. Secondly, you will not have them to begin with, or you'll know how to handle it on the everyday level, I should say, if you're in a problem like that. You may be in a financial problem. If you are awake and understood that the whole social system is false, you'll know how to handle it. No problem, because you're not involved in it. You may pay your taxes, but you're not in it anymore. Go ahead. By the way, when we're all through with these, we can have open discussion. If you want to ask again or try again on any of these, go ahead.
Why would I want to feel suspicious?
Why would I want to feel suspicious? One thing you can do is to look to see how frightened you are. And suspicion, which also is agitation, will give you something to think about, something to worry about, which is the false feeling of life we talked about. Why do you go into suspicion at all? Why don't you get the facts about a situation if it's necessary to get them? If you think someone's breaking into your house, you're suspicious they're breaking into your house. Why don't you go and look and see whether they are or not? Why don't you settle the matter? Suspicion is a very poor substitute for getting the facts. Besides that, if you're suspicious you're going to lose something, for example, that will give you the necessary emotional agitation for keeping your neurosis in place, and that becomes very important for you to do this, to keep it in place. Important in quote marks. Why do you bother to be suspicious at all? Why don't you find out the facts? Besides, suspicion is cowardice. You'd rather be suspicious than face what you think might be true. Suspicion, there's a different way to look at it. If you want a curiosity about something, because you want to know something, that could be in another category. But suspicion, neurotic suspicion, is centered around me. Centered around me. I'm suspicious my husband is running around with another woman. Why don't you find out whether he is or not, instead of being suspicious? You can always act on a fact. You can't act on a suspicion without getting into deeper trouble. Are you afraid to face the fact? Finally, why do you torment yourself by being suspicious? Because you love the torment, that's why. Go ahead, Jim.
Where does the blabbermouth get all the energy to chatter on and on, sometimes for hours, non-stop?
Where does he get the energy? Our whole psychic system is energy, isn't it? Is it not? Look at all the energy you have. You're just diverting it into blabbermouthery is all. I don't see any depth, any need to go any deeper into than that. Except that we've talked about channeling it in the right way to waking up. Look at the energy in being resentful. Look at the great energy in being resentful. I've told you that energy is pure at its source, at its original source inside of us. Then we channel it into neurosis, don't we? Into suspicion, neurotic suspicion. Ordinary psychology identifies a paranoid personality as one with extreme suspicions. Everyone is talking about him, thinking about him. They're going to poison his soup, things like that. No matter what it is, someone is thinking about him. Right? Everything, the world centers around him. Great. Isn't that terrific? That'll keep you paranoid. As long as I'm the center of it, I don't care what you do. You can persecute me, but don't ignore me. If you ignore me, I'll hit you so that you can't ignore me. Because I know you're likely to hit me back. Now I've got what I want. I've got a fight going. Great. Maybe I can get through another 24 hours with this hell that I have created so that I won't have to see my nothingness for the next 24 hours. And when I begin to get scared again, I'll pick another fight with you or someone else. Or I'll snap at the waitress or whatever.
How is it possible to be in no thought at all?
Well, you know what I'm going to say to that, don't you? What am I going to say, Sally? Find out. Find out for yourself. I will tell you that it is possible to be in a state where you're not thinking at all at the proper time. Now, when you're cooking dinner and might get burned, you think about the fact that fire is hot. But when you can safely do so, and I urged you to do that last night, did I not? Do you remember what we talked about being in neutral, which is a state of neither yes nor no, yes or no, a state of no thought? How is it possible? I'll tell you how it's possible. Not by doubling your efforts here, but by tripling and quadrupling, if that's the next one, your effort to do what you're told to do here. Take such a simple thing, a simple instruction is writing a simple, clear note. People don't hear. Do you know why you don't hear? Because all our neuroses, all our desires, all our emotions, all our sex drives, etc., scream out so that we can't hear. I knew that when I asked for certain questions, where I gave the last talk in Southern California, I gave the same instructions to keep them short and to the point. I knew they wouldn't be. A lot of them wouldn't be, and they weren't. Go ahead.
Please explain what you mean by the word interferes with our understanding. Please explain what you mean by the word interferes with our understanding.
All right. We'll start from the very beginning. The word is the idea. The word is the thought. They're all on the same level. You understand? I think something. I think roses. I've conceived the idea of roses in my mind. Now I can say either like roses or I don't like roses. Now I have brought myself into the picture. I have created me by the simple word roses connected with me. Oh, I don't like roses. Some association. My mother made me wear a rose or something. But I've connected the word with me, with a thought with me. Why can't I have a rose or any experience without going into the label, the word, the description, so that there's nothing there connect with what I call me? So I don't have an association. Why don't I see the rose, the event, the crabby husband, the deceitful wife? Why don't I see them without injecting thought into it? Because every time I put thought, word, description from the past into it, I must involve myself into it, because that's what I'm made out of. Past thoughts, which I'm repeating right now. I can see, another example. I can be in a crisis situation, what I would normally call a crisis situation. If I don't put the word into it, thought, crisis, if I don't put the word crisis in it, is there a crisis? Or is there a crisis? There can't be. On physical level, there could be if your house is flooded out, but we're not talking about that. I have to be in a certain place where I'm being subjected to something, a court of law, wherever, where I'm being accused, anything like that. If I bring myself into that courtroom or into that quarreling home, wherever, I must have the word in it in order to keep me there. If I can get out of it by dropping the idea, this is a threat to me, this is a danger to me, and be in this neutral position we talked about, how can I feel threatened? How can I feel hurt? How can a non-existent person feel in danger? How? So it's by verbalization, which is the same thing as idea, which is the same thing as description, connected with feelings. that make me think that I'm in a hazardous or, listen to this, or a favorable situation. I met someone who's really, really attractive, or I get a great business opportunity. I don't know how it happened, but boy, I can make a lot of money. There's the word in there. I am going to be rich. I'm going to get a new friend. Nothing is happening except the word and the thought, which I've wrongly connected with what I call me. Therefore, now I'm worried because the opposite will have to take over. Boy, if I can just get through the six different hurdles, then I'll have the money or the woman. Now I'm worried about the 6 hurdles. Why don't you just drop the mess? Why do you work so hard on the level of thought when nothing good can come from it? Except a nice dinner, that could come from it, or a nicely repaired car, or a nice rose garden, that can come from it. Finally, you watch yourself. You watch yourself right up here. When you're in a situation, you think you're going to be frightened in it. You watch your mind and it will even put the word fright in there. Therefore, you're hooked. And you will be frightened because you're now hooked on the level of thought. If you can see that much, you can then go on from there to see that there is this other state that we talked about, in which there's no thought about the situation at all, which is total death of you. Right? Right? Which is, that means you're not there. You have died. Right? Now, if you're not there, how could you be bothered by the fact that you lost the lawsuit or the girlfriend left you? It's only when you're there, which is the word, that you can be hurt. And you're hurt because it's a false situation. You think you exist. If I could just win the lawsuit, I'll have it made. If I can just get the man or get rid of the man, I'll have it made. We are the slaves of thought. Finally, there is another way to see situations which is not thinking about them at all, which is pure intelligence and therefore pure action toward them, including the question of abortion, which you have to find for yourself.
Is there a psychological difference between men and women?
Well, obviously there is. I don't think this is any new information to you, but I'll repeat it. Women are more emotional than men. They live more in their emotions. I'll tell you another psychological difference, which we went into informally a week or two ago. I feel sorry for any of you men who are dominated by a woman. I feel sorry for any of you women who like to dominate men, because you're in an unnatural role. And a really smart, intelligent, aware woman would recognize that role and be in perfect relationship to a man. Perfect relationship. She would understand that this is the way it is. I feel sorry for feminists. You know what I mean by that. You men, I told you 2 weeks ago, you had better wake up and be a man. Find out what that means. If you men are ever cruel to a woman, you're sick. If you ever hurt a woman because you have, through circumstances, authority in any way over power over her, you like to hurt her, then you better work 10 times as hard on what you're hurting her. I'll tell you something else. If either you women or you men trick the opposite sex in order to get what you want from him or her, you are sick. I said if you trick them, if you plot. You have no business hurting anyone. You examine your attitudes toward the opposite sex, a woman or a man. You find out where you're all mixed up. You find out and start to work on that. And when you work on these other things that we've talked about, that will straighten itself out quite nicely and quite naturally. And again, you men, if you're ever afraid of a woman, whether it's a wife or a girlfriend or whatever, if you're ever afraid of a woman and you fawn before her, you'd better come here more often too. Because she will be as sick as you are. She will sense your fawning. And because she is as sick as you are, she'll take advantage of it, and she'll get a sense of superiority over you. You've ruined each other. Look at the sickness between men and women. When you wake up, when you understand these things, whether you're a man or you're a woman, you will have a perfect relationship with every person of the opposite sex. Whether it's a close sex relationship or one you wave to the lady you met once across the street. It'll be perfect because you're not going to enter that relationship with the opposite sex in a wrong way any more than you enter any other relationship. You're going to be free in it, or there's not going to be a relationship. I said you're going to be free in it, or there's not going to be one. I'm no demands on you, never mind you. I'm not going to walk into that relationship a little coward wanting something from you. Sex, companionship, friendship, and then be afraid that I'm going to lose it from you. I'm not going to go into it in the first place. I'm tired of being a frightened little coward wherein every person I meet, I calculate what I can get and then hope I can hang on to it and then be scared. No. This you can call, if you like the phrase, this you can call cosmic sternness. No, sir, dear lady, dear man, I've lived that way long enough. Now, if you and I want to really be friends, which is mean the absence of trickery, fine. I'm not going to play games with you, and you're not going to play them with me. Sorry. But we have a lot of work to do. Go ahead.
Why do you say that our growth takes a long time? Doesn't it take some time, but isn't the seeing instantaneous? Therefore, there isn't any time. Aren't you, parentheses, being what human nature is, conditioning us to a time factor, therefore maybe slowing down this self-growth?
All right, what is the fact of your personal experience in working on this? I'm just as aware as you are, and we've talked it many, many times. We've said many times that if you could drop thought instantaneously, you would be free of the problem right now. Right now. At the same time, you tell me, whoever wrote this question, or any of the rest of you, you tell me whether you can do it or not. Therefore, we have to take into consideration the fact that we are bound by thought, which is time. Thought is time. You take that as part of your insight so that you will be able to drop time, drop thought, and be out of it. You do it. Don't you leave the idea of thought out of it, because thought is a very permanent part of your present nature. You have to think. But you have to see what kind of thought binds you to time and what kind of thought does not. To I time, we should say. And one thought about being conditioned here. You're very foolish if you permit me or anyone else to condition you. Why do you let anyone give you the idea that you're going to have to struggle for years in this? Which you have to do. Now you figure that one out. It isn't easy, is it? I've told you, if you could walk out of here clearly seeing what we've discussed, if you could walk through that door, you've walked through that door a totally new human being. Do it. And all these discussions about conditioning will help you to do it. Because you'll see what you have to do. You'll see that you can't be who you always have been. Go ahead, dude.
We have to say to all thoughts, feelings, sensations, this is not I. This journey leads nearer and nearer to real I, which we cannot observe. Not at all at this point.
Okay, all right. Read it again out loud.
We have to say to all thoughts, feelings, sensations, this is not I. This journey leads nearer and nearer to real I, which we cannot observe. Period. Not at all at this point.
When you are something, when you actually are it, that's quite right, you don't observe it. You are it. How do you observe it? You don't. You are it, and there's no need for self-observation. Working on the level of thought which we are now, we do have to observe everything about ourselves. Then the question, even the question of who am I, real I, doesn't. The problem exists when I have to think about who I am. If you didn't think about who you are, where's the question to begin with? God, truth, reality, doesn't think about who he is. That's not on the level of thought. When the kingdom of heaven within is lived in, discovered and lived in, there is no thought about it. But I have to start with thought, with knowledge, knowledge being on the level of thought, knowledge of my conditioning, for example.
are some of the ways that we do not see our problem?
What are some of the ways I do not see my problems? Okay. How many of you have been upset or disturbed any time since you got up this morning? Any way at all? Any way at all? Any way at all? The driver who? Did you look at it and see your problem? Find out. Find out where you're very fearful of seeing the kind of a person you are. And I've told you before, and you don't even begin to see this. The fear of seeing that you're neurotic is wrong in itself. Because if you could see it, then you'd be able to drop it and you would no longer be it. As long as you fear being hateful, you keep hatred in place. I said, as long as you fear being hateful, you keep the hatred in place. Because fear, suspicion, is a wrong reaction to seeing your own hatred. Why don't you see it and drop it? Why don't you die to being a hateful person? Because you love it. How many of you are in secret anguish? Not now necessarily. How many of you are in secret anguish? I catch your off-guard expressions in this room, you know. I catch the flash of your eyes and the turn of your head. I'm going to tell you something. You're a dupe, D-U-P-E, a dupe. You're being hypnotized by yourself into thinking that this miserable, suppressed life that you now have is all that is possible for you. We're here to expose the hoax. You've heard that before. I'm telling you, I wouldn't live like that for anything. I made up my mind at one time I wasn't going to live that way anymore. And I invite you to join me. Read that question again.
What are some of the ways that we do not see our problem?
Find out for yourself. Go ahead, read the next one, please.
Hatred runs the world. How can I see it more deeply in myself?
Well, if you could take more, I would give you more. I told you once that if I could go around the room and speak to you, it would be too much for you. You wouldn't be able to take it. You can only be given as much as you can absorb at the time. If I give you too much, you'll turn off. Can you sit in this room and you listen? You have no idea of your inner state. Can you sit in this room inwardly and weep and cry and scream and holler with one small part of you that is not part of that, so that you can build your receptivity? You're not asked to be nice in this room, because you can't be. How can you be what you're not? How can a hawk be a dove? Can you sit here and not be duped by your own awfulness, which is a fact? Can you not be in can you cease to be in despair over your own neurosis? Over your own wish to blow up this blasted world, which some of you have? Can you not be shocked at your violence, at your fury? Can you not be shocked by it? But see it impartially so that it doesn't grab you, and you'll put a weakening effect on it. You will simply stand aside from it. But you don't do this because you still are it. You don't understand enough of what it means to start to work intelligently on yourself. To one degree or another, every one of you, you're condemning yourself. Now I repeat, you have never been condemned or accused of anything in this room. That would be leading you astray to condemn you. You're never called stupid. You're never called evil, in spite of what you think. You are told instead that you have been taken over by evil imps. But it's not necessary anymore.